Dr. Han Kyo stared at the massive screen in front of him. Numbers and lines moved across it like a busy highway of light. For 3 years, he had watched these same patterns every day. The galactic gates never stopped working. They never failed. They had been moving ships between star systems for 10 million years without a single problem. But today was different. The screen went completely black at exactly 1432 Galactic Standard Time. Not just his screen. Every screen in the central gate monitoring station on Nexus Prime went dark at the same moment. Han Kyo felt his stomach drop. This had never happened before, not once in recorded history. What just happened? Commander Park Yuna's voice cut through the sudden silence. She walked quickly across the control room, her military boots clicking on the metal floor. Her face showed worry, but her voice stayed calm. That was why she led the gate security division. Nothing ever made her panic. "I don't know," Han Kyo said. He pressed buttons on his control panel, but nothing responded. All the gate detectors stopped at the same time. Around the room, other scientists and technicians were doing the same thing. They pressed buttons, checked cables, and spoke into their communication devices. But nothing worked. The gates were still there. Ships were still moving through them. But the detection systems that watched over everything had simply stopped. Lee Do-won, the youngest member of their team, was working at a station near the back wall. He was only 25 years old, but he understood the gate technology better than people twice his age. His fingers moved quickly over his keyboard as he tried different approaches. "Commander Park," Lee Do-won called out, "you need to see this." Park Yuna and Han Kyo walked over to his station. Unlike the other screens, Do-won's computer was still working, but instead of the normal detection readings, it showed something strange. Very faint signals were coming through the quantum channels. "The detectors didn't break," Do-won said. His voice was excited and nervous at the same time. "They went quiet because they're receiving something so strong that their normal circuits can't handle it." Han Kyo looked at the weak signals on the screen. They looked like whispers in a language he couldn't understand. "What kind of signal could do that?" "I don't know," Do-won said. "But listen to this." He pressed a button and a very soft sound came from the speakers. It was barely louder than breathing, but they could make out words. "Human has endured touch of the apex god." The three of them stood in silence. The whisper repeated the same words again and again. Each time it was exactly the same, no changes, no emotion, just a statement being broadcast across the entire galaxy. "Is this some kind of joke?" Park Yuna asked. But her military training told her this was no joke. Something real was happening. Han Kyo felt cold fear run down his back. He had studied ancient languages as part of his work with alien cultures. The words were in Old Galactic, a language that had not been used for millions of years. Only the oldest races in the Confederation still remembered it. "We need to contact the other monitoring stations," Park Yuna said. "Find out if they're getting the same thing." Over the next hour, reports came in from across the galaxy. Every gate detector had stopped working at exactly the same time. Every monitoring station was receiving the same whispered message. The Galactic Confederation Council was calling emergency meetings. Ships were stuck at gates because the automated guidance systems couldn't function without the detectors. But the strangest part was that only humans seemed able to hear the whisper clearly. Other species could detect that something was being transmitted, but they couldn't understand the words. Their translation devices couldn't make sense of it. Han Kyo worked with Do-won to study the signal more carefully. They discovered that it wasn't just a message. It was connected to the gates themselves. The massive ring structures that allowed travel between stars were somehow part of the transmission system. "It's like the gates are speaking," Do-won said. "But they've been silent for 10 million years. Why are they talking now?" Park Yuna was busy coordinating with other security forces across the galaxy. The situation was getting worse. Some alien governments were starting to panic. Trade routes were disrupted. Military ships couldn't move quickly between systems. The backbone of galactic civilization was breaking down. "We need answers fast," she told Han Kyo. "The council is meeting in 6 hours. They want to know what's causing this and how to fix it." Hankyo knew they didn't have enough time to understand everything, but he had an idea. The message mentions humans specifically, and we're the only ones who can hear it clearly. Maybe this isn't random. He started researching human history, looking for any connection to the phrase "touch of the apex god." Most human records from before they joined the Confederation were basic. Earth had been through so many disasters that much of their early history was lost or unclear, but as he searched, patterns started to appear. Every major disaster in human history had pushed their species to adapt and grow stronger. Ice ages had forced them to develop technology. Asteroid impacts had taught them to work together. Diseases had made their immune systems stronger. Wars had shown them the value of peace. What if, Hankyo said slowly, what if all those disasters weren't accidents? Dowan looked up from his work. What do you mean? What if something was testing humans? And this apex god is whatever was doing the testing. The idea sounded crazy, but it was the only thing that made sense. No other species in the galaxy had faced as many catastrophes as humans. Most alien worlds had stable climates and peaceful histories. Earth was the exception. Park Yuna finished her latest communication with Confederation Command. The alien races are starting to ask questions about humans, she said. Some of them think we caused this somehow. Maybe we did, Hankyo said. Not on purpose, but maybe our existence triggered something. As the hours passed, more information came in. Archaeological teams across the galaxy were reporting strange activations at ancient ruins. Sites that had been dead for millions of years were suddenly showing energy readings, and all of them were broadcasting the same message about humans and the apex god. The galactic internet was filling with theories and panic. Some alien philosophers were calling humans the chosen species. Others were demanding that Earth be isolated until the crisis could be solved. Fear was spreading faster than information. In the monitoring station, Hankyo, Park Yuna, and Do Hwan worked through the night. They studied the signal patterns, contacted experts across human space, and tried to understand what was happening. As dawn broke over Nexus Prime, they had learned 3 important things. First, the message was definitely connected to human history. Second, whatever was sending it had technology far beyond anything the current galactic civilizations could understand. Third, this was just the beginning. The gates were still working, but they were no longer just transportation devices. They had become something else, something that was watching and waiting. We need to prepare for contact, Park Yuna said. Whatever this apex god is, it's coming. Hankyo nodded. Humanity had survived ice ages, asteroids, plagues, and wars. Now, they would face something even bigger, something that had been watching them for their entire history. The whisper continued across the galaxy, growing slightly stronger each hour. Human has endured touch of the apex god. It was no longer just a message. It was an announcement. Dr. Choi Sumin had spent her entire career digging through the ruins of dead civilizations. As the galaxy's leading expert on pre-Confederation cultures, she had seen the remains of hundreds of species that had risen and fallen before the current age began. But she had never seen anything like what was happening now. Her research station on Kepler 442b was normally quiet. Most days she worked alone, carefully examining artifacts and translating ancient texts. But today, her communication system had not stopped ringing. Everyone wanted to know about the apex god. The problem was that until yesterday she had never heard that name before. Suman pulled out every ancient text in her database. She searched through millions of documents written in dozens of dead languages. For 12 hours she found nothing. Then, buried in a collection of stone tablets from the Vorthak ruins, she discovered a single reference. The Vorthak had been one of the oldest known civilizations. They had disappeared over 8 million years ago, long before the gates were built. Their language was so ancient that only 3 people in the galaxy could read it. Suman was one of them. The tablet was damaged, but she could make out most of the words. The great tester came to our world when our people grew numerous. It brought fire from the sky and ice from the deep places. Many died, but those who lived became stronger. The great tester marked us as survivors, but we were not chosen. We failed the final test when we gave up hope. Suman felt her hands shake as she read the words again. The great tester sounded very much like the apex god from the whispered message, and the description of tests matched what had happened to Earth throughout human history. She sent her findings to Ambassador Jang Minho at the Confederation Council. Within an hour, he was calling her directly. "Dr. Choi, this is incredible," Jang Minho said through the video link. "But I need more proof. The Council is in chaos. Half the member species want to quarantine humanity. The other half want to worship us. We need solid evidence." "I'm already working on it," Suman said. "I'm sending research requests to every archaeological site in the galaxy. If the apex god tested other species, there should be more records." While Suman searched for more evidence, Captain Kim Tae-hyun was dealing with a different kind of discovery. His exploration ship, the Soul's Pride, had been investigating an ancient space station near the galactic rim when the gate detectors stopped working. Now the station was showing signs of life for the first time in millions of years. "Captain, the energy readings are off the charts," his science officer reported. "The entire structure is powering up." Tae-hyun watched through the ship's windows as lights began to appear along the ancient station's hull. It was huge, easily 10 times larger than any human city, and it was clearly not built by any known species. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," the communications officer said. "Put it through," Tae-hyun ordered. The same whisper that was echoing across the galaxy came through their speakers. But here, close to the source, they could hear something else underneath it, a deeper sound like machinery working far below the surface. "Take us closer," Tae-hyun said, "but keep our weapons ready." As the Soul's Pride approached the station, more lights activated. Symbols appeared on the hull, written in the same ancient script that Dr. Choi Suman was studying. The symbols pulsed with energy as if they were trying to communicate. "Captain," the science officer said, "I'm reading massive computational activity inside the station. It's like a giant computer is waking up after millions of years of sleep." Back on Nexus Prime, Han Kyo was coordinating with research teams across human space. Every human colony was reporting the same thing. Ancient ruins that had been inactive for millions of years were suddenly showing energy readings, and all of them were broadcasting messages about humanity. "It's not just the gates," Han Kyo told Commander Park Yuna. "There's an entire network of ancient technology across the galaxy, and it's all connected to us somehow." Park Yuna was studying military reports from across the Confederation. "The alien governments are getting nervous," she said. 3 species have already recalled their ambassadors from Earth. They think we're some kind of threat." "Maybe we are," Han Kyo said, "but not in the way they think." Dr. Choi Suman's research was expanding rapidly. Archaeological teams from across the galaxy were sending her their findings, and a clear pattern was emerging. Every major civilization in galactic history had faced a period of extreme testing. Disasters, wars, plagues, and catastrophes had struck them at the height of their development. Most species had either been destroyed or had given up and retreated to simpler lives, but a few had survived and grown stronger. These survivor species had been marked in some way. Ancient texts spoke of them being touched by the great tester or blessed with endurance. However, every single one of these survivor species had eventually disappeared. The records were unclear about what happened to them. Some texts suggested they had ascended to a higher existence. Others claimed they had joined the tester in the great work. But none of them were still around to ask. Humanity appeared to be the first survivor species to be marked while still actively part of galactic civilization. "This changes everything," Suman told Ambassador Jang Minho during their next call. "We're not just another species that got lucky. We're part of some kind of cosmic selection process that's been going on for millions of years." "But what's the purpose?" Jang Minho asked. "Why test species? What's the end goal?" "I don't know yet," Suman admitted. "But I think we're about to find out." Captain Kim Tae-hyun's team had managed to dock with the ancient station. The structure had welcomed them, opening passages and providing atmosphere. It was as if it had been waiting for them specifically. Inside, they found chambers filled with technology that defied understanding. Machines that seemed to work on principles beyond current physics. And everywhere the same message was being broadcast in dozens of languages, including perfect Korean. Human has endured touch of the apex god. Human is marked for the great transition. Human will choose the path forward. Great transition? Taehyun said. Path forward to what? His team explored deeper into the station. In the central chamber, they found something that made them all stop and stare. It was a map of the galaxy, but not as they knew it. This map showed layers of reality stacked on top of each other, with pathways connecting different dimensions. And at the center of it all was a symbol that looked remarkably like Earth. Send this to Dr. Choi immediately, Taehyun ordered, and get me a direct line to Ambassador Jang. When the images reached Dr. Choi Suman, she finally understood what she was looking at. The ancient texts had been incomplete. The apex god wasn't just testing species for survival. It was preparing them for something much bigger. The survivor species didn't disappear, she told the emergency council meeting through video link. They graduated. They moved to a different level of existence. And now it's humanity's turn. Ambassador Jang Minho felt the weight of the entire galaxy watching him. Dr. Choi, are you saying that this apex god is going to take humanity away from normal space? I'm saying it's going to give us a choice, Suman replied. Every survivor species got to choose their next step. Some chose to ascend, others chose to stay and guide younger species, and some chose something else entirely. What kind of something else? Jang Minho asked. Before Suman could answer, every screen in the council chamber flickered. The whispered message changed for the first time since it had begun. Human has endured touch of the apex god. The great testing is complete. The time of choosing approaches. Prepare for contact. The chamber fell silent. Representatives from hundreds of species stared at the screens in fear and wonder. Humanity had passed some kind of cosmic test that most of them had never even known existed, and now something was coming to collect the results. Commander Park Yuna was already mobilizing human defense forces across the galaxy, not to fight, but to prepare for whatever was about to happen. All human ships are to maintain ready status, she ordered. We don't know if this contact will be peaceful or not. Han Kyo continued monitoring the gates, which were becoming more active by the hour. New passages were opening between star systems that had never been connected before. The ancient network was reconfiguring itself for something big. Captain Kim. Taehyun and his team were still exploring the awakened station. They had found records of dozens of previous survivor species, each one documented in detail. The files showed their testing periods, their survival rates, and their final choices. But the files for humanity were different. Instead of a completion date, they showed an ongoing process. And instead of a single choice, they showed 3 options that no previous species had ever been offered. The station's central computer activated a communication system. For the first time, they heard a voice instead of a whisper. It was vast and ancient, speaking in perfect human languages. Humanity has exceeded expectations. You have not merely survived the tests, you have thrived through them. This changes the protocols. New choices are available. The apex god comes to offer what has never been offered before. Across the galaxy, every human could suddenly hear the voice in their minds. Not threatening or commanding, but respectful and curious. Prepare yourselves, children of Earth. The news of humanity's special status spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Within days, 3 distinct groups had formed among the alien species. Each group had very different ideas about what should be done with humanity. Admiral Shin Jiwon sat in the emergency meeting room aboard the human flagship Incheon. Around the table were representatives from all major human colonies and military districts. The holographic displays showed the current political situation across the galaxy, and it was not good. The Reverent Coalition believes we're some kind of divine species, Admiral Shin reported. 12 alien governments have already sent official requests to establish temples on human worlds. They want to worship us. Engineer Yu Sun-ho, who had been working on defensive systems, shook his head. That's almost as dangerous as the other groups. We can't let ourselves be turned into gods. That never ends well. The neutral zone is probably our best hope, said Dr. Bae Hyuna, the psychologist who had been studying interspecies relations. 43 species have declared themselves neutral. They want to study the situation before making any decisions. What about the third group? Admiral Shin asked, though she already knew the answer would be bad. The Containment Alliance, Dr. Bae said grimly, led by the Thorian Empire and the Velari Collective. They believe humanity is a threat to galactic stability. They want us isolated or eliminated before the Apex God returns. Admiral Shin felt tired. She had spent her entire career trying to build good relationships between humans and other species. Now, through no fault of their own, humans had become the most controversial species in the galaxy. How many ships do they have? She asked. Engineer Yu Sun-ho pulled up military intelligence reports. The Thorian Empire alone has 3,000 warships. The Velari Collective has fewer ships, but their technology is more advanced. Together, with their allies, they could field a fleet of 8,000 vessels. Against our 400, Admiral Shin said. Those are not good odds. But Yu Sun-ho smiled. Actually, Admiral, our odds might be better than you think. I've been testing some new defensive technologies and they're working beyond all expectations. He activated a holographic display showing test results from the past week. Human weapons and shields were performing at efficiency levels that should have been impossible. It started 3 days ago, Yu Sun-ho explained. Every human-designed piece of technology began working better. Our engines are more efficient. Our weapons are more accurate. Our shields are stronger. It's as if our tools are being enhanced by some external force. Dr. Bae Hyuna had been studying similar phenomena in human psychology. It's not just our technology, she said. Human performance in all areas has improved. Reaction times are faster. Problem-solving abilities are enhanced. Even physical strength and endurance have increased by measurable amounts. The marking from the Apex God, Admiral Shin realized, it's not just a label. It's actually changing us. Meanwhile, on the Thorian homeworld, General Vexitar was meeting with representatives from the Containment Alliance. The Thorians were a warrior species that had dominated their region of space for thousands of years. They did not like the idea that some young species from a backwater planet might be more special than they were. The humans must be stopped, General Vexitar declared. Their very existence threatens the natural order. If this Apex God favors them, then the Apex God must be opposed as well. The Velari representative, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline form, pulsed with agreement. Our ancient records speak of civilizations that claimed divine favor. Each one eventually tried to conquer or control other species. The humans will do the same once they realize their power. Then we strike before they realize it, General, Vexitar said. We have identified 17 human colony worlds with minimal defenses. We can eliminate their population centers before they can respond. The plan was simple and brutal. The Containment Alliance would launch simultaneous attacks on human colonies, while the main human fleet was distracted by diplomatic meetings. By the time humanity could organize a response, millions of humans would be dead, and their species would be too weakened to pose a threat. But the Alliance had made one critical mistake. They assumed that human technology would work the same way it always had. Admiral Shin Ji-won received the first attack warning from the colony on Kepler 186F. The message was brief and desperate. Under attack by unknown ships. Defenses failing, send help. But by the time human reinforcements arrived, they found something unexpected. The colony was intact. The attacking Thorian ships were floating in space, their hulls cracked and their systems dead. What happened here? Admiral Shin asked the colony commander through video link. I'm not entirely sure, Commander Cho Sung-jae replied. The Thorians hit us with everything they had. Our shields should have collapsed in minutes, but they held. More than held. They reflected the energy back at the attackers. Engineer Yu Sun-ho studied the battle recordings with growing amazement. The colony's defensive systems operated at 300% of their designed capacity. That should be physically impossible. Similar reports came in from other attacked colonies. Human defenses that should have been easily overwhelmed were instead destroying much larger attacking forces. Weapons that should have been outmatched were cutting through enemy armor like paper. The Containment Alliance's first strike had not only failed, it had revealed something important. The Apex God's marking was not just symbolic. It was providing real, measurable advantages to humanity. Dr. Bei Hyuna was analyzing the psychological effects of these victories. The alien species in the Alliance are becoming more desperate, she reported. They see that conventional attacks aren't working, so they're planning something more extreme. She was right. On the Velari homeworld, the collective's leaders were debating the use of reality-warping weapons. These devices could destroy entire star systems by collapsing local spacetime. They were considered too dangerous for normal warfare, but the Velari believed the human threat justified their use. If we cannot defeat them with conventional weapons, we must eliminate them completely, the primary node declared. Better to destroy several star systems than to allow this contagion to spread. But as the Velari prepared their most destructive weapons, they discovered that their own technology was beginning to malfunction. Systems that had worked perfectly for thousands of years were developing random errors. Their reality warping. Devices were becoming unstable and dangerous to use. The same problems were affecting the Thorian Empire and other members of the Containment Alliance. It was as if the universe itself was protecting humanity by sabotaging their enemies' weapons. Admiral Shin Ji-won was studying these reports when Captain Kim Tae-hyun contacted her from the ancient station he was still exploring. "Admiral, I think I understand what's happening," Tae-hyun said. "The station's computers have been running simulations of galactic civilization for millions of years. Every time a species was marked by the apex god, the universe began preparing for their success." "What do you mean, preparing?" Admiral Shin asked. "The physical laws around marked species become more flexible," Tae-hyun explained. "Their technology works better. Their enemies' weapons work worse. It's not magic, it's the universe itself changing to support the chosen survivors." This revelation reached Dr. Choi Suman as she continued her archaeological research. She had found records of similar phenomena surrounding previous survivor species. Each one had experienced a period where reality seemed to bend in their favor. "It's not permanent," she warned during an emergency council session. "The enhancement period lasts until the apex god makes contact. Then the marked species has to choose their path forward. If they make the wrong choice, the enhancements disappear." Ambassador. Young Minho felt the pressure of the entire human species on his shoulders. "What constitutes the wrong choice?" "I'm still researching that," Suman admitted. "But from what I can tell, species that chose to use their temporary advantages to dominate others were stripped of their marking and abandoned. And species that chose correctly? They graduated to something beyond our current understanding of existence." As these discussions continued, the Containment Alliance was growing more desperate. Their conventional attacks had failed, and their superweapons were too unstable to use. Some members were beginning to question whether opposing a species marked by the apex god was wise. But General Vextar and the Thorian Empire had one more plan. If they could not destroy humanity directly, they would force the apex god to remove its protection. "We will attack the humans' homeworld," General Vextar announced. "If they are truly marked for greatness, let them prove it by defending Earth itself. And if they are not, then their homeworld will burn, and the galaxy will see that their god has abandoned them." The Thorian fleet began moving toward Earth. 3,000 of their most powerful warships, supported by allies from 6 other species. It would be the largest military force ever assembled against a single world. Admiral Shin Ji-won received the intelligence reports with grim determination. The human fleet could not match such numbers, even with their enhanced technology. This would be humanity's greatest test yet. But as she prepared for the defense of Earth, something unexpected happened. Captain Ojihi felt something strange happening to her mind as she piloted the human flagship Busan toward Earth. The Thorian fleet was only 6 hours away from the solar system, but that was not what worried her. What worried her was the voice that had started speaking in her thoughts. It was not threatening or painful. Instead, it felt like someone very wise and very old was gently asking permission to share her consciousness. The voice spoke in perfect Korean, but with an accent that suggested it was much older than any human language. "Do not fear, Captain Ojihi," the voice said. "I am the one your people call the Apex God. I need to speak with humanity, and you have the strongest mind among your species. Will you allow me to use your voice?" Ojihi had faced many dangerous situations in her military career, but nothing had prepared her for this. Still, her training taught her to stay calm under pressure. "What do you want to tell my people?" she asked silently. "The truth about what is coming," the voice replied, "and the choice that humanity must make." Meanwhile, scientist Nam Daesung was studying the massive structures that had appeared around Jupiter and Saturn. His instruments could barely comprehend what they were seeing. The objects seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at the same time, shifting between solid matter and pure energy. "These aren't defensive platforms," he told Admiral Shin Ji-won over the communication link. "They're sensory organs. Something incredibly vast is using them to observe our solar system." General Kwon Soo-young was coordinating the defense of Earth from the command center in Seoul. Every human military unit in the galaxy was moving toward the solar system, but they would still be outnumbered 3-1. The fate of humanity would depend on the enhanced technology that engineer Yu Sun-ho had discovered. "All defensive systems are operating at peak efficiency," Yu Sun-ho reported. "But General, I'm reading energy patterns that don't match any known physics. Whatever is enhancing our technology is getting stronger." The Thorian fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. General Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the human homeworld. Earth looked small and blue and helpless. It was hard to believe that this tiny planet had produced a species marked by gods. "Begin the attack," General Vexitar ordered. "Show the galaxy that these humans are nothing special." But as the Thorian ships moved toward Earth, they encountered the ancient structures around Jupiter and Saturn. What had looked like simple defensive platforms suddenly revealed their true nature. They were gateways to somewhere else. From the structures emerged ships unlike anything in the known galaxy. They were made of crystallized space-time, glowing with the light of distant stars. Each one was larger than a moon, and they moved without any visible means of propulsion. "What are those?" General Vextar demanded. His science officer was studying their sensors with confusion. "Sir, I'm not sure they're ships at all. They appear to be alive." The ancient vessels moved to intercept the Thorian fleet, but instead of attacking, they simply waited. A communication signal reached every ship in the system, carried by forces that transcended normal space. Captain Ojihi found herself speaking with a voice that was not entirely her own. The words came from her mouth, but the presence behind them was vast beyond imagination. "I am the Apex God," Ojihi said, her voice carrying across every communication channel in the solar system. "I have watched civilizations rise and fall for billions of years. I have tested countless species seeking those with the strength to survive what is coming." General Vextar felt fear for the first time in decades. "What is coming?" "The Great Transition," Ojihi replied, though she did not fully understand the words herself. "Reality as you know it is approaching its end. The universe is about to transform into something new. Most species will not survive this change. Only those who have proven their adaptability and resilience will be offered a choice of how to proceed." Scientist Nam Daesung was recording everything with instruments that were working far beyond their designed capabilities. The data he was collecting would revolutionize understanding of physics if anyone survived to study it. "The gates you have used for travel are not transportation devices," the Apex God continued through Ojihi. "They are sensors and tools of a consciousness that spans multiple galaxies. I have been using them to observe and test civilizations for longer than your species can comprehend." "You manipulated our history," Admiral Shin Ji-won said, joining. The communication from her ship. The disasters that shaped humanity. You caused them. I provided challenges, the apex god admitted. Each species faces trials that test their fundamental nature. Most fail by giving up hope or turning to violence against their own kind. Humanity succeeded by becoming stronger through adversity and maintaining unity even in the darkest times. General, Vextar was beginning to understand the magnitude of what he faced. You're saying that this human species is superior to all others? Not superior, the apex god corrected. Different. Most species seek comfort and safety above all else. When faced with extinction, they despair. Humanity faced extinction dozens of times and chose to fight on anyway. This is a rare trait, and it is needed for what comes next. The ancient vessels around the Thorian fleet began to demonstrate their power. Without weapons or attacks, they simply altered the local laws of physics. Thorian ships found their engines working in reverse. Their weapons fired backwards. Their life support systems began producing music instead of air. This is impossible, General Vextar said. Your understanding of possibility is limited. The apex god replied. You think in terms of fixed physical laws, but reality is more flexible than you realize. The Great Transition will require species that can adapt to constantly changing conditions. Dr. Choi Suman, listening from her research station, finally understood what all her archaeological discoveries had been pointing toward. The previous, marked species, she said. What happened to them? They chose their paths forward, the apex god explained. Some ascended to exist as pure consciousness. Others remained in normal space to guide younger species. A few joined me in the work of preparing civilizations for the transition. And now humanity must choose? Humanity will be offered choices that no previous species has earned. Your unique response to testing has created new possibilities. General Kwon Soo-young was coordinating with human forces across the solar system. But he was beginning to realize that this was not a battle in any conventional sense. What are these new possibilities? Captain Oh Ji-hee felt the apex god organizing its thoughts before speaking. The answer, when it came, changed everything. First choice, ascend beyond physical existence and become gardeners of consciousness across the universe. Second choice, remain in normal space as the guardians and teachers of species who will face their own testing. Third choice, pioneer the frontier beyond reality itself, exploring dimensions that even I have not seen. The communication channels fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity was being offered the chance to transcend not just their current existence, but the very concept of existence as understood by galactic civilization. No previous species was offered the third option, Admiral Shin Ji-won noted. No previous species demonstrated the ability to thrive in impossibility, the apex god replied. Humanity has consistently succeeded by attempting what should not work. This suggests you might be capable of exploring what should not exist. The Thorian fleet was now completely helpless. Their ships were trapped in bubbles of altered spacetime, unable to move or attack, but they were not being harmed, merely prevented from interfering. What happens to the rest of us? General Vextar asked. If humanity chooses to leave normal space, what becomes of the other species? The transition continues, regardless of humanity's choice, the apex god explained. But their decision will affect how the process unfolds. Their presence or absence will determine whether other species have guidance during the change. Engineer Yu Sun-ho detected massive energy buildups throughout the solar system. Reality itself was becoming unstable as the apex god prepared to reveal the full scope of the situation. The Great Transition begins in 72 hours, the apex god announced. Humanity has until then to choose their path. But know this, once chosen, the path cannot be changed. Consider carefully what you wish to become. The ancient vessels began to withdraw toward the edges of the solar system. The Thorian fleet found their ships functional again, but General Vextar had lost all desire to continue the attack. Faced with cosmic forces beyond imagination, their military concerns seemed petty and pointless. Captain Ojihi felt the presence of the apex god beginning to withdraw from her mind. Before it left completely, it shared one final message meant only for her. Tell your people that I am proud of what they have become. In all my eons of testing, no species has impressed me more. Whatever they choose, they will shape the future of existence itself. As the cosmic presence faded, Ojihi was left with the weight of the greatest decision in human history. In 72 hours, humanity would choose not just their own fate, but the fate of reality itself. Across the galaxy, every human felt the presence withdraw, but they also felt something new, a sense of unlimited possibility. President Lim Jamin stood before the emergency session of the United Earth Assembly. Representatives from every human colony and settlement were present, either in person or through holographic projection. In 72 hours, they had to make the most important decision in the history of their species. The apex god has given us 3 choices, President Lim said. We can ascend to become cosmic gardeners, watching over consciousness throughout the universe. We can remain as guardians and teachers for other species, or we can explore beyond the boundaries of reality itself. The debate that followed was unlike anything in human history. Philosophers argued with scientists. Military leaders discussed possibilities with artists. Children asked questions that made adults reconsider everything they thought they knew. Explorer Song Minji had volunteered for the most dangerous job of all. She would scout the third option, the unknown frontier beyond reality. Using technology provided by the apex god, she would briefly travel to the spaces between dimensions and report what she found. It's completely unprecedented, scientist Nam Daesung warned. We have no idea what exists beyond the boundaries of normal space and time. You could encounter forces that would destroy your mind, or worse. Song Minji smiled. That's exactly why I have to go. Humanity has always been about taking risks that others wouldn't take. If there's something out there that even the apex god hasn't explored, then we need to know what it is. The exploration pod was unlike any human technology. It existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions that had no names. When Song Minji activated it, she felt herself becoming something more than human while still remaining herself. The journey beyond reality was indescribable. Song Minji found herself in a place where thoughts became physical objects and emotions had colors that did not exist in normal space. Time moved in circles, and space folded back on itself in ways that should have been impossible. But most importantly, she discovered that the beyond was not empty. It was full of potential, endless possibilities waiting to be shaped into new forms of existence. Here was the raw material from which universes could be built, and new types of life could be created. It's not just unexplored, she reported back to Earth. It's unexplorable. There's so much possibility here that even infinity isn't big enough to contain it all. Someone could spend eternity here and still discover new wonders every day. Scholar Ryu Wanshik was studying the implications of each choice. As humanity's leading expert on long-term civilization planning, he understood better than most what each path would mean for the future. If we ascend, we become something beyond human, he explained to the assembly. We would gain cosmic perspective and power, but we would lose our connection to the struggles that made us who we are. If we stay as guardians, we remain human, but take on enormous responsibility. Every species that faces testing would look to us for guidance. We would become teachers for the entire galaxy. And if we choose the frontier, we become pioneers of the impossible. We would explore realms that even gods have not seen. But we would be completely alone out there, at least at first. The debate continued for 2 full days. Different groups favored different options. The scientists wanted to ascend, believing that cosmic consciousness would allow them to understand the universe completely. The military leaders preferred staying as guardians, feeling that other species needed protection and guidance. The explorers and adventurers were drawn to the unknown frontier, but as the deadline approached, a consensus began to emerge. It was not based on logic or careful analysis. Instead, it came from something deeper, the same spirit that had carried humanity through ice ages and asteroid impacts and countless other disasters. "We are explorers," President Lim Jamin said during the final assembly session. "We have always been explorers. When faced with the unknown, we don't retreat or accept limitations. We push forward to see what's on the other side. Even if it means leaving everything we know behind?" asked one representative. "Especially if it means that," President Lim replied. "Humanity's greatest strength has always been our willingness to risk everything for the chance to discover something new." The vote was not unanimous, but it was decisive. 73% of humanity chose the third option. They would pioneer the frontier beyond reality itself. When the decision was announced, the apex god's presence returned to the solar system. This time it spoke directly to every human mind without needing a vessel like Captain Ojahi. "You have chosen the path that no other species has been brave enough to take," the apex god said. "I am both proud and concerned. The frontier beyond. Reality is truly unknown, even to me. You will face challenges that I cannot predict or help you overcome. That's exactly why we have to go," President Lim replied, speaking for all humanity. "If there are challenges out there that even you can't handle, then someone needs to learn how to face them." The apex god's amusement was felt by every human. "You continue to surprise me. Very well. I will provide you with the tools you need to begin your journey, but remember, once you cross the threshold, you will be truly on your own." The great transition began at exactly the time the apex god had predicted. Reality started to shift and change in ways that most species found terrifying. Stars began moving in new patterns. The laws of physics became suggestions rather than rules. Many civilizations panicked as their technology stopped working in predictable ways. But humanity was ready. The apex god had given them tools that allowed them to adapt to changing conditions. More importantly, their history of surviving impossible situations had prepared them mentally for a universe that no longer made sense. As reality transformed around them, humans helped other species cope with the changes. They shared their adaptability and their refusal to give up hope. Some alien civilizations that had originally opposed humanity now looked to them for guidance and support. The gates throughout the galaxy began their final transformation. Instead of simply connecting different star systems, they became bridges between different types of existence. Some led to the ascended realm where consciousness existed without physical form. Others led to stable areas where normal reality continued unchanged. And a few special gates marked with symbols that only humans could read led to the frontier beyond everything. Scholar Ryu Wanshik established the archive of human knowledge, recording everything their species had learned throughout their history. This knowledge would be left behind for other species to study and learn from. "We're not abandoning the galaxy," he explained. "We're leaving it a gift. Our experiences with surviving impossible situations. Our methods for maintaining hope in darkness. Our techniques for adapting to constant change." Explorer Song Minji volunteered to be part of the first group to cross into the frontier. Her earlier scouting mission had shown her wonders beyond imagination, but it had also shown her how much there was to discover. Every universe that exists had to start somewhere, she told the departure ceremony. Every form of life had to be created by someone. We're going to learn how to do those things ourselves. The departure itself was surprisingly peaceful. Humanity did not vanish in a flash of light or disappear dramatically. Instead, they simply stepped through the special gates and began exploring dimensions that had no names. Behind them, they left a transformed galaxy. The other species, no longer united by fear of humanity, began to work together to understand the new reality they found themselves in. The human archive became the most studied collection of knowledge in galactic history. Some species chose to ascend to cosmic consciousness. Others remained in normal space but worked to improve their civilizations. And a few, inspired by humanity's example, began to explore the edges of reality themselves. The apex god, its work in this region of existence complete, began to prepare for its next project. But it carried with it memories of the species that had impressed it most, the humans who had chosen to explore what even gods had not dared to investigate. In the frontier beyond reality, humanity began their greatest adventure. They discovered that the space between dimensions was full of sleeping potentials. universe seeds waiting for the right touch to grow into new forms of existence. They learned to shape possibility itself, creating new laws of physics and new types of life. They built bridges between different concepts of reality, connecting realms that had never known each other existed. And sometimes, they returned to normal space to check on the galaxy they had left behind. When they did, they brought gifts, new forms of energy, innovative technologies, and most importantly, proof that there was always something more to discover. The children of other species grew up hearing stories about the humans who had chosen the impossible path. These stories inspired new generations of explorers and dreamers who pushed the boundaries of what their own civilizations could achieve. Humanity had become what they had always been meant to be, the species that refused to accept limits. They were no longer human in the way they had been on Earth, but they retained the core trait that had carried them through every trial, the absolute refusal to give up when faced with the unknown. In the vast frontier beyond reality, they continued to explore and create and discover,